Tell me what the arrangement was in terms of rent, because you had a little bit of an unusual arrangement.
We were going to spend $2,000 minus $500 for my maintenance while we took care of the property. Normally you would have a landscaper or somebody like that, an abatement person that comes in and removes stuff and takes it to the dump. But
you did all of that?
What
yes.
I did, correct.
Okay. And so you did all of that for a negotiated $500 reduction
yes.
in monthly rent. Ms. Verdict, do you agree that that was the arrangement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Did you have any issues with the way that he performed the work?
No, Your Honor.
And what about you guys? You had one big issue, right? And that was the lack of heaters.
So there is a wall heater down in I guess you call a spare bedroom. And in the bedroom and the downstairs, neither one worked. There was no thermostat. So you couldn't control them. You couldn't light them. You couldn't start them. So we had to use other means in order to be warm.
What about space heaters?
We didn't have space heaters. There were some on the property in the like...
In storage.
They're not ours to just take and use and go, you know, plug them in and just keep using them. So we didn't use them.
What, if anything, did you do about the lack of heat?
I don't think that I was entirely aware that they didn't actually have heat. I do recall that we had the discussion about the propane units that were wall units in the bedrooms. And after they did move, I was able to confirm with SoCal Propane that they did in fact work, and the pilot just had to be lit. I also provided electric, and there was also
fire. So this comes to one of the hearts of the dispute, right? Is it turned out you were on a single meter for the whole property. So the landlord said utilities would be included.
Correct.
You were not paying for electricity. So if you had chosen to do something like run space heaters, the cost would have fallen to the defendant, correct?
Correct.
It feels like, because you're seeking thousands of dollars in compensation for the lack of heat. And it feels like to me, if this was a serious issue, she would have been hearing from you twice a day. Was this a huge problem?
Yeah, communication with her was a huge problem.
We didn't have communication with her. She asked us only to communicate with the property manager.
So do you have thousands of texts with the property manager?
No, they were all verbal conversations. We were on the phone a lot.
You said you had no heat for 4 months, is that correct?
Right.
Which 4 months were those?
November until we moved out. Because it didn't start getting cold
There was
in the
no
snow.
thermostat.
Understood.
There was one, she had somebody come and install a thermostat for the Airbnb, but she didn't have them come and install a thermostat for us.
Okay, is that accurate?
That does not sound familiar, Your Honor.
Okay, but I have trouble with that does not sound familiar, because Mr. Gorman has a very specific recollection, and when you say that does not sound familiar, that sounds to me like, I don't know.
Well, I feel like I would recall something like that, and I don't.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass this to Judge Corriero.
Thank you, Judge. You claim it was the plaintiff's responsibility to keep the propane full, Ms. Verdict.
Pursuant to the lease agreement, everything was on them. Once I discussed...
What provision of the lease agreement indicated that they would be responsible for the propane?
It didn't say propane, it said utilities in the lease agreement, but the front cabin had its own propane tank that was not owned by me. It was owned by SoCal Propane. So if I needed to fill the tank, I would have to call them and have them come and fill it.
And what about the cabin that the plaintiffs were in?
That was an owned propane tank that was owned by the property. And if that propane tank were empty, I would have known, because they wouldn't have been able to use the gas stove. So
Oh, a second.
that...
Were you able to use the gas stove?
Yes, sir.
You have other properties besides this property?
Correct, Your Honor.
And what do you do for a living?
I am an attorney, and I have a boutique real estate group in San Diego.
Would it be fair to say that you left responsibility for the management of this property to others?
The town maintenance engineer would ensure that the maintenance aspects of the property were working correctly, and then the VRBO property in the front was managed by a professional VRBO.
Except at one point you realized that the electricity was skyrocketing, and that's why you felt that you could no longer maintain the property. Is that right?
Actually, there was a big issue with fire insurance in the mountains. A lot of the insurance carriers decided to drop insuring properties.
Okay, so you ultimately told the defendant initially you were going to leave by when?
We had until the 2nd, so the 3rd.
You didn't get out until when?
March 12th.
You say March 27th.
I know that the keys were returned on the 27th.
Okay, now ordinarily we'd say if you don't return the keys, that's what you should be charged with.
Yes, there was
But there was a snowstorm.
Yep.
Genuine.
And you say you couldn't get out.